Brian Carrick's story intrigued me from the first moment I heard about it. Imagine a quiet town, a teenager who disappears on a normal night, and a trail of blood found in the place where he was last seen. Yet, over 2 decades later, no one knows what truly happened to him. This case has everything that keeps you up at night: the missing pieces, the chilling clues, and the conflicting testimonies that only make things murkier. In this story, I'll take you through the layers of mystery surrounding Brian's disappearance, peeling back each strange twist: a friend's confession, accusations of foul play, and a conviction that was eventually overturned. You'll learn about the unsettling theories that linger in the community and the unresolved questions that haunt Brian's family to this day. As I go through each chapter, you'll find yourself asking, what really happened to Brian Carrick? Come along as I reveal the facts, the secrets, and the shadows of a case that still holds Johnsburg, Illinois in its grip. Join me for the odd, mysterious, and strange story of Brian Carrick. It was December 20th, 2002, just days before Christmas in Johnsburg, Illinois, a town small enough where everyone seems to know each other. Amid the familiar sounds of bustling holiday shoppers and light snow brushing the sidewalks, a teenager named Brian Carrick stepped out of his family's home, leaving behind a faint trace of the normal life he'd soon vanish from forever. 17-year-old Brian was the kind of kid everyone assumed was dependable, known for his part-time job at Val's Foods, a grocery store right across the road from his home. But that night, when Brian walked out his front door, he would not return. He wasn't the type to simply disappear without a word, so when he failed to show up the next morning, his family knew something was terribly wrong. By the time the store opened the following day, the questions of Brian's whereabouts quickly escalated from a routine inquiry to a troubling mystery. Strange details began to emerge, hinting at something dark that might have taken place behind the store's familiar aisles. A clue in the produce cooler that would only deepen the confusion, sparking a years-long investigation that left more questions than answers, and one that would haunt Johnsburg for years to come. But what really happened to Brian Carrick? Could this quiet town hold the key to an unsolved secret? And how could a teenager simply vanish without a trace in a place where everyone seems to know everyone else? This is a story where the facts are murky, the theories unsettling, and the truth, if it ever emerges, may be more disturbing than anyone could ever imagine. So let's take a look back at that night, at all the available details the investigators unearthed, and try to piece together the mystery of Brian Carrick. It was supposed to be an ordinary night for Brian, a high school junior who had spent much of his time juggling schoolwork and shifts at Val's Foods. Even on his days off, the small grocery store across the road from his house was almost a second home. On December 20th of 2002, just before Christmas, he left his home, intending to stop by the store. No one suspected that this would be the last time they'd see him. Brian wasn't even scheduled to work that evening. Earlier that day, he'd asked a coworker to swap shifts with him, but when that plan fell through, he still decided to drop by. It's alleged that he cashed his $150 paycheck and had intended to visit the local video store. Either way, he walked out of his home and crossed the street to Val's Foods. But by the time his family went to bed that night, Brian hadn't come home. The next morning, as Brian's parents awaited for him to join them at breakfast, there was only silence. Assuming he might have left early for work, they tried not to worry. You see, Brian was the 11th of 14 children in his Irish Catholic family. He and several of his siblings worked at Val's Foods, the local grocery store. It wasn't until a call came from the store at around noon asking if they'd seen Brian that a terrible realization had set in. Brian was missing. His family quickly reported his disappearance, and soon the entire town was aware that something was wrong. It wasn't just his sudden disappearance that troubled everyone. Brian was known for being reliable. He wasn't the type to wander off, especially without telling his family. And with growing urgency, his large family and friends searched for answers. Did he leave the store on his own, or had something happened to him inside the walls? The sense of normalcy in Johnsburg was slipping, as whispers of something more sinister began to ripple through the town. Investigators arrived, and as they began combing through the details of that night, they stumbled upon a piece of evidence that would change everything and raise questions that still remain unanswered to this day. As the investigation into Brian's disappearance gained momentum, investigators focused their attention on Val's Foods, the last place Brian was seen. To the casual shopper, the store was as ordinary as any other, with rows of produce, canned goods, and familiar faces of coworkers and regular customers. But now, as detectives walked its aisles, they were looking for something far from ordinary, any trace of what might have happened to Brian. Their efforts soon turned up a disturbing clue. Law enforcement became aware of the blood in the produce section on December 22, 2002, 2 days after Brian Carrick's disappearance. An employee at Val's Foods had discovered a pool of blood in the produce cooler the day after Brian went missing, but initially mistook it for meat drippings and cleaned it up. It wasn't until December 22nd, when Brian, who was reported missing, that the significance of the blood was recognized and the police were informed. But later testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Brian. This discovery cast a dark shadow over the investigation. Along with the blood in the cooler, traces were found leading to other areas in the store. There were droplets near the back exit, on a few produce boxes, and even in the trash compactor. Detectives were struck by the eeriness of these findings. A teenager had vanished, and now there was evidence suggesting he may have been hurt inside the very place where he was last seen. But these clues only deepened the mystery. If something violent had happened to Brian, why was there no sign of him? No body? No other evidence pointing to where he may have gone? And who else, if anyone, had been with him that night? These questions unsettled the entire community and pushed investigators to probe deeper. As detectives continued to search for answers, theories began to surface. Could Brian have had a confrontation with someone he knew? Was there a dispute that escalated that evening, leading to a tragic outcome? Or had he stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see? Each possibility seemed more chilling than the last, leaving the people of Johnsburg with one haunting realization. Whatever happened that night, it wasn't simply an accident. Yet, without Brian himself, there was only so much the investigators could prove. So, they pressed on, digging further into the lives of those closest to him, hoping to untangle the story behind the blood-stained cooler. Would they uncover an innocent explanation, or was the truth about to reveal something far more sinister? With blood found at Val's Foods but no trace of Brian, investigators knew they had to look beyond the surface. Soon, their attention turned to those closest to Brian, his coworkers, and the people he spent most of his time with. In a small town like Johnsburg, nearly everyone seemed connected in some way. But amid these familiar ties lay darker secrets. One name began to stand out early on: Mario Casciaro. Mario wasn't just another coworker, he was a supervisor at Val's Foods, and he had known Brian well. Investigators learned that Brian owed Mario a debt, one tied not to money from work, but allegedly to drugs. It was rumored that Brian had been caught up in a cycle of dealing, with Mario as one of his sources. As disturbing as this detail was, it opened up new questions about what could have happened in the store that night. To further complicate matters, another individual emerged in the story: Shane Lamb. Known for a volatile past and criminal record, Shane had a history that made him stand out. But it was his connection to both Mario and Brian that caught investigators' attention. Rumors hinted that Shane was involved in a plan orchestrated by Mario to intimidate Brian into paying his debt. Could this have been a confrontation that spiraled out of control? When questioned, Shane initially denied knowing anything about Brian's disappearance. For a while, the investigation stalled, with no solid evidence linking anyone to the crime. Shane Lamb was granted immunity from prosecution in connection with Brian Carrick's death. In 2010, he was facing a potential 12-year prison sentence on cocaine charges. Lamb agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. In exchange for immunity related to Carrick's death and a reduced sentence on the drug charges, he testified that Mario Casciaro had enlisted him to intimidate Carrick over the drug deal, leading to a confrontation in which Lamb claimed he knocked Carrick unconscious. He claimed that on the night of December 20th, Mario had asked him to scare Brian. According to Shane, things took a turn when he confronted Brian in the store, and in the heat of the moment, he allegedly knocked him unconscious. Shane said that he left the scene, and Mario told him that he would, quote, take care of it. The confession was both shocking and perplexing. If Shane's story was true, then what happened after he left? Did Mario indeed take care of it? And if so, how did the teenager end up disappearing without a trace in a town where everyone knew each other? Shane's testimony would be pivotal, yet it raised as many questions as it answered. Why had he waited so long to come forward? And was he truly telling the whole story? Or was there more that he hadn't revealed? Detectives now faced a critical choice. Could they rely on Shane's words alone, or did they need more evidence to determine what really happened that night? Theories began swirling within the community. Some believed Shane's account without question, while others were skeptical, wondering if he was covering for someone else, or maybe even for himself. In the search for answers, investigators would need to find a way to corroborate Shane's statement or risk the possibility that Brian's case might remain an unsolved mystery. As the case began to unfold in court, the Carrick family held on to hope that they might finally get justice for Brian. But with each revelation, they faced an unsettling truth. In a story filled with suspicion, loyalty, and betrayal, it was hard to know who, if anyone, was telling the whole truth. After years of anguish, the Carrick family finally saw a chance for justice in 2010, when Shane Lamb's testimony brought the case back to the courtroom. With Shane's confession implicating Mario Casciaro in Brian's disappearance, prosecutors had what they needed to proceed. Their theory was chillingly straightforward. Mario, frustrated by Brian's unpaid debt, had asked Shane to intimidate him, leading to an altercation that ended tragically. But without a body or definitive proof, the case would hinge on the strength of Shane's words. For the Carrick family, this trial was a painful reminder of their long wait for answers. The courtroom became a battleground of speculation and counterclaims, where every detail of that December night was scrutinized. Shane, with immunity granted in exchange for his cooperation, took the stand. He repeated his account of confronting Brian, detailing how a heated exchange turned physical. According to Shane, he threw a punch and Brian went down. He claimed that Mario then assured him that he would, quote, handle what came next, words that haunted the courtroom. Mario's defense team countered aggressively, painting Shane as an unreliable witness with a history of violence and criminal behavior. They argued that Shane's confession was motivated by self-preservation, a way to shift blame and save himself from possible charges. In their view, the lack of physical evidence beyond the blood found at the store only served to reinforce the unreliability of Shane's testimony. With no body, no weapon, and only Shane's word, they insisted there wasn't enough to convict Mario. The trial ended in a deadlock, with the jury unable to reach a unanimous decision. But the Carrick family's pursuit of justice didn't end there. In 2013, Mario was retried, and this time the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder with intimidation. The verdict brought a brief moment of relief, as if answers were finally within reach. Mario was sentenced to 26 years in prison, a decision that seemed to offer closure. if only in part to Brian's family. However, the story didn't end with Mario's conviction. Just 2 years later, in a stunning turn of events that would send the case spiraling back into uncertainty, in 2015, Shane Lamb recanted his testimony, claiming he had been pressured by the prosecutors to implicate Mario. In a reversal that shocked the Carrick family and the community, he stated that Mario had not been involved in Brian's disappearance and that his previous testimony had been fabricated under pressure. With this recantation, the Second District Appellate Court of Illinois overturned Mario's conviction, citing insufficient evidence to sustain it. Mario was subsequently released from prison, his conviction erased, but the implications of Shane's reversal left a void in the case that is yet to be filled. For Brian's family, it was a heartbreaking setback, a return to the same unanswered questions that they had faced for over a decade. Was Shane telling the truth now, or had he been truthful in his initial testimony? And, if Mario wasn't involved, as Shane had claimed, then who else might have known what happened to Brian that night? The courtroom drama, which had seemed to promise answers, only deepened the mystery. With Mario freed and Shane's credibility shattered, the case was once again at a standstill, leaving Brian's family and the town of Johnsburg with lingering questions and fading hopes of finding the truth. After Mario Casciaro's release from prison, the case of Brian Carrick's disappearance was left in a haze of confusion. For Brian's family, the court's decision brought an overwhelming sense of defeat. They had waited years for answers, only to see the one person convicted in the case walk free, leaving them with the same unresolved mystery they had grappled with since that winter night in 2002. Mario's release reignited discussions within Johnsburg, sparking new theories, speculations, and whispers about what might have happened that night to Brian. Many in the community questioned Shane Lamb's sudden change in testimony. Why would he implicate Mario initially, only to later retract his entire account? Was he pressured by authorities as he had claimed, or was there more to his story? Some wondered if Shane himself was involved more deeply than he admitted, while others speculated that someone else entirely could be responsible, a person who had remained out of the spotlight all along. Then there were those who believed that Mario had indeed been involved, and Shane's recantation was merely an attempt to protect a friend. Despite the overturned conviction, some locals viewed Mario with suspicion, convinced that he knew more than he had ever revealed. Others, however, sympathized with him, arguing that he had been unfairly targeted by the prosecutors, desperate to close a cold case with limited evidence. Without concrete proof, every theory seemed as likely, and as flawed, as the next. Was Brian's disappearance truly the result of a violent encounter gone wrong, or was there another layer to the story that remained hidden? Some speculated that he may have seen or known something that put him in danger, perhaps connected to the hidden side of life in the seemingly quiet town. In the years following Mario's release, these questions have haunted the Carrick family and Johnsburg itself. Brian's body has never been found, leaving his family without the chance for a proper farewell or final answer to the tragedy. Investigators continue to revisit the case from time to time, searching for new evidence or leads, but without a confession, a witness, or physical proof, the case seems to remain in the permanent state of limbo. Now, there could be someone out there, perhaps another former coworker or friend, who knows what happened but has chosen to stay silent. And if so, why? Is it out of fear, loyalty, or simply a desire to avoid the spotlight in the town where everyone knows everyone else? For the Carrick family, there is little left but the hope that one day someone will come forward, or that piece of evidence long hidden will finally come to light. But until then, Brian Carrick's story remains an unsolved mystery, a reminder of how even in the smallest of towns, Darkness can lurk behind familiar doors, and trust can dissolve into suspicion. The case remains officially open, yet every passing year brings a sense of urgency. Will the truth ever emerge? Or will Brian's story fade into the shadows, leaving his family and community forever haunted by the mystery of what happened on that December night? Years have passed since Brian Carrick disappeared, yet his memory remains deeply embedded in Johnsburg. For his family, the lack of closure is a wound that never fully heals. Each passing holiday, each ordinary day spent without answers, intensifies the ache of loss. The pain of not knowing has become a part of their lives, a constant shadow following them in a quiet town that still holds so many secrets. The theories, suspicions, and unanswered questions have left an indelible mark on this small community. In every corner of Johnsburg, people continue to wonder, could someone they know hold the key to unlocking the truth? Has the person responsible moved on with their life, blending seamlessly into the everyday routines of the town? The mystery lingers, fueling speculation and an unsettling realization that the truth could lie closer than anyone dares to believe. Investigators haven't given up on Brian's case. Advances in forensic technology bring the faint hope that, one day, new methods might reveal evidence that went unnoticed back in 2002. Cold case teams occasionally revisit the files, searching for overlooked details, reviewing testimonies, and hoping for a breakthrough. But as time passes, the trail grows colder, and with it, the likelihood of finding answers fades. I personally have questions about this case where I couldn't find the answers online, so I'm going to ask you, my viewers, if you have knowledge of the legal system, can you answer the following questions? Does the immunity given to Shane only cover the suspected murder of Brian, or does it also cover everything to do with the case? For example, he took the stand twice and perjured himself by lying to the court. That's a crime, isn't it? Why wouldn't he be convicted of that crime if not for the assault and battery he admitted to committing on Brian? Bottom line, is that immunity so far-reaching that there isn't anything related to the case involving Brian that Shane couldn't be held accountable for? I'll rely on you, my knowledgeable legal voices, to share what you may know about my questions in the comments below. In the absence of closure, the story of Brian Carrick has taken a life of its own, transforming into a reminder of the fragility of life and the unsettling reality that even in places where trust and familiarity seem unbreakable, there are cracks through which the truth can slip away. His case has become a cautionary tale in Johnsburg, a reminder to never stop searching for the truth, no matter how elusive it may seem. His mom, Terry, passed in 2009, and subsequently his dad, Bill, passed in 2014, both never knowing the truth about what happened to their son, Brian. The surviving siblings in the Carrick family hold on to the hope that one day someone will find the courage to break their silence and bring Brian home, giving them the peace they have sought for so long. Until then, Brian Carrick's disappearance remains a mystery, a story half told, a reminder that even the most ordinary lives can be touched by the inexplicable and the mysterious. Hey, thanks once again for watching my video. My name is Vince. Would you please consider supporting the channel in some way? I truly appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this story, you might also be interested in the story involving the murder of the Jameson family. You will find the link to that story in the upper right corner of your screen. Click there to watch that story now. Thank you.